Halloween seems to be the high holy day for the Satanist and the occultist. Halloween is the time when all across the country, in secret little places, in the dark, there will be little babies sacrificed to Satan.
A child, when it is first born, is innocent and pure. It's untouched, it's unspoiled. Nothing bad has ever entered that child. That child's thoughts are pure. So they sacrifice that to the devil as the child being pure. Because all things pure are feared by Satanists and also by the devil. So if you've got something pure and you destroy it, you take away the purity and there's no longer a threat there.
I remember just constant, absolute terror, and I can't explain how intense, how strong, how all-encompassing that terror is. Unless you do this, you're gonna get killed. You're gonna die. They made it to be like it was a great privilege to eat the bodies. I mean, the girl that I had to kill, they treated me like I was being given a great gift when they gave me a part of her body that I had to eat. I remember being horrified, but knowing that my horror would not let me survive and that I had to put my horror somewhere else.
There's certainly bankers, there are certainly psychologists, there are certainly people in media. We hear a lot about Department of Children's Services workers, we hear a lot about police officers. The cult has reason to have their people in virtually every walk of life feel that the ritual abuse of children is at bottom an attempt to develop human resources for the cult, develop children who have had so much abuse and so much mind control to which they've been subjected that they will be maximally beneficial to the cult in a whole variety of areas.
But with what possible aim?
I think their aim is really to have as much control of this country and of other countries as they can possibly get.
It is entirely possible that this is, beyond the mafia and any other organized criminal activity, the largest network of evil and organized criminal functioning that exists in the world. They intend to infiltrate the justice system, legislative and executive branches of government, positions of power and authority, and the professions, so that they can take over. After all, they do believe, as the Bible prophesies, that someday their ruler, the Antichrist, will control the entire world.
Glenn, could you tell us about your involvement in any rituals at Halloween as a child?
There was another little girl that was involved in the occult with me, and her name was Becky. Now, Becky was a different type of child. She was blessed to be a sacrifice. I was being blessed to be a high priest, where she was being blessed and born into the coven there to be a sacrifice. Now, we were in a ritual where we were married together. It was a marriage to the beast, and me and the little girl were married together, and there was a lot of sexual abuse that took place and a lot of blood that was spilt over us, joining us together.
Baby, I'm playing on you tonight. Hunt you down, eat you alive. Tell no lie, 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 lie. You can't deny, nah, nah, nah. That beast inside, side, side, side. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No girl, no lie, 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 lie. You can't deny, nah, nah, nah. That beast inside, side, side, side. Side, 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 side. Nah, 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 nah.
In a ritual where we were married together. It was a marriage to the beast, and me and the little girl were married together, and there was a lot of sexual abuse that took place, and a lot of blood that was spilt over us, joining us together.
When do Halloween rituals actually begin, and what is the ultimate purpose of Halloween?
Well, the ritual that I remember the most clearly began about the end of September. Me and the little girl, the one I mentioned named Becky, the abuse was very concentrated at that time. We were taken into several rooms where our clothing was removed. We spent the next couple of weeks in a kind of a shack where a lot of rituals went on, where a lot of animals were killed. They summoned Lucifer and his spirit to come and possess me, and so that I would be blessed to take over the position of the high priest at a certain point in time. Now, Halloween night, they had again put me and the little girl in the back of this van, and we again drove off, which seemed like for a long time. We were drugged once again, and we finally came to this stop. They took the little girl out and they left me in the van. I could hear a lot of commotion that was going on outside. People that were screaming and yelling, and this low murmuring and moaning noise that was going on, like some kind of a low chanting noise that was going on. So I knew in my mind there was some type of a ritual going on, because I'd heard that many times before. You know, it was real common to see people fall on the ground and convulse and go into convulsions during rituals and stuff with the demonic presence that were around. And finally, a woman came to the back of the van and she said, "It's time to go." And she brought me out of the van, and I could see that there was just a lot of people around. Some were dressed in dark brownish kind of robes with hoods over them. They took me up and they led me up to this stone altar. And I remember I saw the little girl, and she was on the altar. Now at first, you know, I just wondered what was going on, because you never knew. I mean, they used the altar for a lot of different things. They could have just been sacrificing an animal over, could have been a sexual abuse from the high priest onto her. You know, it was a hard thing to know for sure. Well, they ushered me up to the altar, and I could see that they had bound her feet. They had her feet spread apart, her legs, and they had bound them to the ends of the altar, and they had taken her arms, which were laying out this way, and roped them to the altar, which had little kind of like hooks, which they could bind the ropes around. And she was really white. I remember seeing her, and she was just real pale and real white. And I noticed that they had slit the bottoms of her feet and her wrists, and they were taking the blood that was running out of those areas and putting them into chalices and passing those cups around to different people who were partaking of her blood. Then the high priest, he took the athami, or the ritual knife, and he picked it up and he put my hand on it, and then he forced it into her chest. So when I think back on Halloween, you know, over that period of time that happened, you know, that was the climax event, Halloween night, where they killed that innocent little girl. And this is something that's happening every Halloween.
All Satanists have been abused as children. All. There is not, I can't imagine any normal person going into something so horrific, vile, disgusting, so violent, humiliating, could possibly, it's impossible.
I'm afraid. Whenever I see her, it's so real. I don't want to be hospitalized. My career is so fucked as it is.
Textbook TSS, Havana. You saw heavy combat as a child.
Could I be a multiple?
I don't see that, but if you are, we'll deal with it.
Damn her.
I guess the thing that's most compelling to me as a clinician is to hear reports from a variety of patients who do not have contact with each other, who report very similar stories, and stories which are shocking and alarming about murder and sacrifice of human beings, cannibalism, sexual promiscuity, in what appears to be a very ritualized, planned setting, using not only children, both boys and girls, but adults as well. We also hear similarities in reporting of being buried alive and then being unearthed and told that they've been reborn in the name of Satan. We have stories of people being married to Satan in marriage ceremonies. There are repeated reports of serial sexual assaults with the impregnation of a young adolescent and the destruction of that child, often by the mother itself, in the name of Satan.
Has it been eye-opening to see this docuseries? What's it been like for you?
I cried so many times watching it because I don't see it as me. It's strange. I can watch myself. It's weird. Yeah, of course I'm a bit of a narcissist who that's in this industry. Wow. But like, at the same time, it's still like, when a camera's on, I'm on. And if I know I'm not capable of being on, that's why I would say I couldn't film today.
Not bad.
And no one knows this, and we can finish after this. I had a miscarriage for those 2 weeks that I took off. It's a very long story, but that's why on the show when it says she doesn't want to come down, she doesn't want to come down, I couldn't move. I was sick.
More recently, we're beginning to hear more specific techniques of indoctrination and torture. Torture is very frequently used to one, strengthen the individual to maintain secrecy within the cult, that is, intimidation. It's also considered something to be desired by cult, that is, the toleration of pain, the mixing of pain and sexual experiences, and blurring the boundaries between them. But it's, quote, to make a good soldier for Satan.
You don't believe it? I know it's hard to believe myself. But there has been such an acceleration of worship of Satan that we believe that these sorts of things are happening, and we have evidence that they are.